Afghanistan, new investigation reveals cruel pattern of Taliban torturing and executing Hazaras. 6 people including a 12-year-old girl killed in night raid on family home. Taliban killings indicate pattern of attacks on ethnic minorities and members of former security forces. These violent deaths are further shocking proof that the Taliban continue to persecute, torture and extrajudicially execute Hazara people. Agnes Kalamard. Taliban fighters killed 6 Hazara people in a deliberate attack against the ethnic minority in Afghanistan's Ghor province, Amnesty International said today following a new investigation. On the 26th of June, the Taliban detained and unlawfully executed 4 men during a night raid. The body of at least one of those executed showed signs of torture. A woman and a 12-year-old girl were also killed during the raid. The attack is part of a wider pattern of unlawful targeted killings against people who the Taliban see as adversaries. In this case, the victims were both members of the Hazara community and associated with the former Afghan government. Agnes Kalamard, Amnesty International's Secretary General, said, "These violent deaths are further shocking proof that the Taliban continue to persecute, torture and extrajudicially execute Hazara people. The Taliban must immediately end this cruel pattern of targeted killings and, as the de facto authorities, ensure the protection of all Afghans. The Taliban must investigate these killings and ensure that those responsible are prosecuted in accordance with international human rights obligations and standards. If the de facto authorities cannot provide justice, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court should immediately open full investigations into all cases of extrajudicial executions." In addition, along with the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation in Afghanistan, Amnesty International calls for an independent accountability mechanism in and for Afghanistan. Amnesty International documented similar extrajudicial executions of Hazara people in Ghazni province in July 2021, and Detained province in August 2021. Despite publicly promising not to target former government officials, the Taliban have still not investigated or prosecuted anyone for the killings. Amnesty conducted 8 remote interviews, including with witnesses to the June attack this year, analyzing 38 photos and 3 videos taken in the attack's aftermath, consulted a forensic pathologist to review the images of the bodies, and reviewed satellite imagery of the area to confirm the location of one of the killings. Several of the photos analyzed were published online by Taliban media, including the Ghor Province Governor Media Office, which deleted the post soon after it was published. Family murdered on the night of the 26th of June this year, Taliban forces raided the home of Mohammad Muradi, a Hazara man and security official under the former government. He had also previously led a People's Uprising Program force, a local militia, against the Taliban in 2020 and 2021. Muradi had recently returned to his home in Chahar Asyab, in the Lalwar Sarjangal district in Ghor province, following an unsuccessful attempt to flee to Iran, after which he was in hiding in other cities around the country. Like many who had been involved in opposing the Taliban, Muradi had not accepted the offer of a personalized amnesty letter, due to the fear of reprisal attacks by the Taliban. These letters are often issued to former security and government officials, offering permission to return home in exchange for a promise to lay down arms. Witnesses told Amnesty that on the night of the attack, Taliban forces fired rifles and rocket-propelled grenades at Muradi's home, killing Taj Gul Muradi, his 22-year-old daughter, who had studied medicine and had been providing health care in the community. The attack wounded Muradi and 2 of his other children, a son and his 12-year-old daughter. The girl suffered severe stomach injuries and died the next day. Muradi's left leg was injured, and he surrendered to Taliban forces through the intervention of local elders. However, the Taliban then dragged him outside the house and shot him dead. An analysis of photos of Muradi's body shows damage to the front of his shirt, indicating a likely chest wound, and an exit wound in his forehead. Amnesty reviewed photos and videos that show damage to Muradi's home consistent with witness testimony. The images were also geolocated by analyzing visible features, including vegetation, nearby pavements and the building's layout, and satellite imagery. Tortured and extrajudicially executed 3 other men who had been staying at Muradi's home were detained and then extrajudicially executed. 2 of them, like Muradi, had previously been members of the People's Uprising Program force, though none had taken part in fighting with the militia for some time. Ghulam Haider Mohammadi, Muradi's nephew, had been visiting relatives. Photos of his body indicate he was executed with at least one gunshot to head, while kneeling and with his hands bound behind him. Locals found his body approximately 50 meters from Muradi's home, left between some rocks in a tree-covered area. Witnesses told Amnesty that the other two victims, Asif Rezi and Arif Sangri, were put in a vehicle and driven away to be killed in a separate location. The bodies of the two men were later discovered in an uninhabited part of Takel, more than 30 minutes' drive from where they were initially detained. Asif Rezi had been living in Kabul but had returned to his home village a few days before visiting relatives. Rezi was shot dead while his hands were cuffed behind his back. Photos and a video of his body show 4 distinct gunshot wounds to his head, chest, right thigh, and left hand. Based on the nature of his wounds, apparent bullet trajectory and gunpowder stains, the wounds to his leg and hand were done at close range prior to execution. Such intentional infliction of pain on a bound detainee constitutes torture, a crime under international law. Photos indicate that Arif Sangri was also executed while bound and detained, with at least one close-range shot to the head. One of the photos posted by the Taliban on Facebook, claiming credit for the successful operation, shows Sangri with a significant facial wound surrounded by fresh bright red arterial blood, indicating the Taliban took the photo immediately after his death. In contrast, photos provided by people who discovered the body show Sangri with the identical wound, but the blood dark and dried, meaning time had passed. The Taliban news sources that posted the image of Arif Sangri's body described the night raid as a targeted operation that culminated in a fight between rebels and mujahideen, or the Taliban. The account claimed 7 rebels had been killed, detained and wounded, and that 1 Taliban member was killed, with 2 others wounded. To justify the deaths, the statement went on to say that the raid had occurred after fighters associated with Maulavi Mahdi, the Hazara leader of a Taliban defector group, had attacked the Taliban in Borkhab district of Sar-e-Pul province, and then fled and established themselves in the village of Chahar Asyab. This Taliban statement is incorrect. Taliban control. The Taliban seized power in Afghanistan following the collapse of the government in mid-August 2021. Amnesty has called for the protection of thousands of Afghans at serious risk of Taliban reprisals. There have been numerous cases of raids and extrajudicial executions targeting those the Taliban perceives as adversaries, those affiliated with the former government, particularly Hazaras, Shias, or those fighting with the National Resistance Front (NRF).